Hey everybody, how you doing? Well, that's good. Welcome to PHLY Flyers presented by Mortgage CS. Check out mortgagecs.com/PHLY to start your home buying process today. Company NMLS ID number 1464766. My name is Bill Matz. I'm your director of fun and games for the afternoon. Joining me as always, Philadelphia's #1 hockey beat reporter. It is Charlie O'Connor. What's going on today, Chuck?
You know, got a haircut, just chilling. I'm feeling great right now, actually.
Charlie is elated right now.
So happy.
Put out on Twitter, I'm done, bitches. See you in September. Now, he's still going to be writing stuff.
Still going to be on the show.
It's not like you're just done.
No,
we have the show every day, Monday to Friday.
Exactly. I take a lot of pride in my season review series, so I'll be working on that. But the big articles are done.
They're done.
It feels good.
That's good.
Feels real good.
Man, they are going to they're going to trade for Zegras tonight at around 10 o'clock, probably.
Oh, man.
But we're going to get into a little bit of that today. Yesterday we did the show, and the idea was this offseason was a missed opportunity. And I think we got a little bit more into that, just before we went live. The idea that during this rebuild, or some people want to call it something else because they're not tanking, but during this rebuild, every transactional period, off seasons, trade deadlines, whatever it may be, is an opportunity to acquire talent. And since they have decided, the Philadelphia Flyers have said, we're not bottoming out. We're not guaranteeing ourselves 3 to 4 years of top 5 picks.
Exactly.
We're not doing that. That's eliminating one of the ways to guarantee yourself high-end talent.
Exactly. The easiest way.
The easiest possible way. Bottom out for a few years, get a bunch of blue chip prospects. Whoever works out, and boom, this is your core going forward.
Yep.
They're not going to do that.
Which is fine. That's their choice.
You can get lucky. Maybe Jet Luchenko turns into a fucking star. Matvei Michkov falls to them at 7. He maybe should have gone 2. All these things are possible, but again, higher degree of difficulty. Since they're not doing that, every trade deadline, off-season, free agency period is an opportunity to acquire those players you need to build a championship contender. This offseason, now still lots of time left, but as we're seeing, the big moves seem to be done for the most part. Can always be a surprise. We've seen later offseason moves before. Maybe one of these teams file with an arbitration filing. They have another buyout window. Things happen. We just saw the Flyers do that with Tony D last year. But for the most part, seems like this offseason's over. This is an opportunity that has gone by. It does not mean they cannot take advantage of other opportunities.
Exactly.
But this is one that has passed without acquiring any of those players that they need to compete for a championship one day.
Yeah, I think the difference, because we talked a little bit about this yesterday, the difference between the Hextall rebuild and the Brier rebuild. I mean, I guess Hextall really never called it a rebuild, but it functionally was. The difference between the two is that with Hextall, while there were certainly people that wanted him to be more active, and maybe in retrospect he should have been, my opinion is generally in retrospect he just should have drafted better players or had a better development infrastructure to turn those players he drafted into actual impact guys, which they clearly didn't. But the difference was that Hextall was working with an NHL roster that already had high-end guys. It already had a bona fide star in Claude Giroux and a clear-cut second-tier borderline star in Voracek.
Perennial all-star.
And it had Simmons, who was also in that world
30
too.
Goal scorer.
And you had Sean Couturier, you had Couturier and Shen. They clearly chose Couturier out of those two. But you had two guys who plausibly could develop into a high-end guy. Couturier ultimately did. So they got that. What I'm saying is that Hextall had a little bit more justification to sit on his hands and just draft guys, be middle of the road for a while, draft a bunch of guys, because he already had that top tier. His bet, and this was the bet that in Giroux's case was proven right, in Voracek's case was proven wrong, his bet was that I'm going to hope to God these guys age really well. That into their early 30s, they're going to stay high-end guys, and then we're going to have the second wave of guys who hopefully are stars, but even if they ultimately end up just being second-tier guys, that really should be enough, because the biggest problem when they were in their prime was they didn't have enough support. They didn't really have any support. Now we're going to get them the support by being patient for 2, 3, 4 years. Briere doesn't really have that. No. There is no Claude Giroux on this team. Sean Couturier, even if he comes back and proves that the first half version of himself is real, that is not 2017, 2018 Sean Couturier where, like, dude deserved MVP votes. He was that freaking good. That's not Couturier anymore. They have Konechny, but Konechny is, I would say, worse than Voracek. Good, but, like, peak Konechny is not as good as peak Voracek.
No, peak Voracek was a point-a-game player.
Exactly.
Travis Konechny,
point-a-game player and also a dominant play-driving winner.
And also...
Because I think Konechny is borderline point per game, but Voracek, we talked about this yesterday, Voracek never missed games.
Never missed.
And then also was the kind of guy who, when he's on the ice, you're going to collect 56% of the shots on goal and scoring chances.
Zone entry machine, which paired with Claude Giroux, huge. Like, even if Giroux... All right, like those years Giroux was like hurt, it was like, well, he still had like 70 points.
Right.
Because he's really good in the offensive zone.
And he was great on the power play.
He could dish you a pass.
We missed that.
Like those two cross-ice passes on the power
Incredible
play.
on the power play.
And you have Wayne Simmons in front. You're going to
score a lot of goals. But the point I'm making is that Briere doesn't have the luxury of just being like, well, we'll draft Luchenko's and Oliver Bonks and just have them support the core. Because there is no core.
There's no core.
The core is, we're hoping Michkov is the guy. Konechny is going to be 28 when his next contract. And then, like, a bunch of dudes who maybe. But again, that's a maybe. So because of that, because Briere doesn't have those stars, he has to do more work. He can't do what Hextall did, and ultimately Hextall's strategy didn't work. But again, my argument is that it could have worked if you would have just drafted better. Because we know the Claude Giroux aged extremely well. He's still nearly point per game at like 35, 36 years old. Briere can't do that. Briere cannot sell that. Briere cannot sell the well, we're just going to draft a lot. Like, no, you got to do things. Now, they didn't have to do things this summer. It's not a total failure. They didn't do things this summer. But for them to succeed, they either need to absolutely blow away their draft picks where you get a couple star players in the third round or mid-first or whatever, or you got to make trades. They didn't make trades this summer, or at least it doesn't seem like they're going to, which means it's a missed opportunity. And at some point in the future, whether that be during the season, this upcoming season, whether that be in the 2025 offseason, whether that be in the 2026 offseason, they're going to need to make trades, or they're going to need to go heavy into free agency to get a Panarin type. They didn't do either of those things. They said they weren't going to go into free agency, and the cap situation certainly precludes that. They could have made trades. They didn't, so it's a missed opportunity. Not devastating, not the end of the world, but it is, objectively speaking, a missed opportunity because of the situation they find themselves in and because of the decisions they've made about the way they're going to execute this rebuild.
And that, it's just... All right, if you're not going to do this, you have to do that.
Right.
And thus far, they have not done that.
Exactly.
They still can.
They still can.
They can,
to be sure,
at any time between now and 3 years from now. But now would be nice.
Yeah.
But we're going to get into that a little bit more in a bit, because there was some stuff that came out of yesterday's show that I want to circle back and get to. But one of the main points that we didn't get to on yesterday's show when we're talking about all this was the Laughton of it all.
Laughton of it all.
I think there were two guys going into this offseason that I was semi-convinced would not be on the roster going in to next fall.
You felt pretty certain. I was nowhere near certain.
I thought Ristolainen's injury made it more complicated. And the fact that he had to have surgery and this was a major thing and he's out till now,
right?
That did complicate things. No one really knows what to expect from Rasmus Ristolainen coming back from this major injury. I just thought, man, the Scott Laughton thing, eventually you have to move on. Like a player like him he's not a star by any means. He's got some intangibles that other front offices absolutely overvalue that, and I know that because This front office absolutely. I think you need lead. It's not as if
really good point.
It's not as if the leadership and all this locker. It's not as if that stuff is worthless. But
Briere straight up said that he overvalues Laughton. Like, we're not even making this up.
Yeah,
Briere
he said, I overvalue.
Briere straight up has said, if you want Scott Laughton, you have to overpay because we value him higher than his on-ice contributions. Like, this isn't us making shit up. No. Briere straight up said he overvalues Scott Laughton and is frank about it.
A 14-goal bottom six guy, like, that shouldn't be worth a first-round pick and more, maybe. Like, if that's your asking price, you overvalue him. That said, I get the whole thing. So you're not surprised he's still here?
No. Really? I thought there was a chance. I considered doing, because I talked about my season review series. It was actually ended up looking like I was, proven completely clairvoyant here because I usually try to get the guys who I think are going to get traded or released or bought out or whatever. I like to get them out of the way before the busy part of the summer because I'm like, I'm never going to have another opportunity. If I write a Cam Atkinson season review in July, who's going to read it? He's gone. So I did the Atkinson one in early to mid-June, and I thought about doing a Laughton one. I thought about doing a Farabee one. I thought about doing a Konechny one. And I was like, you know what? Nah, I'm light on time, and I don't think they're getting moved. And now I will have the opportunity in July to do a Laughton one and to do a Farabee one because they're still here and people will still care. I thought it was possible. I thought that they made it clear to him he wasn't getting moved at the deadline in no small part because multiple players in the team went to Briere and Jonesy and basically said, like, Laughton deserves to be part of this. That, he's been so integral in creating this culture that has allowed us to, no one was saying this out loud, but allowed us to play way above our talent level, that he deserves to be part of this playoff run and get to see the playoffs. So I really didn't think he was getting moved at the deadline. There was an implication of, like, this could be your last ride, that maybe, the trades that we turned down at the deadline, we might not turn down in the offseason. So that was possible. But I still thought that overall, they didn't want to move him. They like having Scott Laughton on this team. They like what he does in the locker room, especially, but they also just like him as a player. They think he's a good player who isn't great, but can fill a lot of roles. They are weak down the middle. He's a center. He can play center. They don't have a lot of centers in the organization, period. So if you're going to move him, you're going to have to find somebody else to play center. Functionally, there's that problem. And then there's the fact, and this is the big thing, and we're going to get into it. I do think that the arrival of Michkov makes them more interested in having Laughton around for the cultural element of the room.
And that's really what I wanted to get to, because, like, the way I read the situation is at the deadline, and we talked about this, I was like, I want them to do a lot of stuff at the deadline, stockpile as many assets as possible. But since they've played themselves into this position where it certainly looked like they were going to make the playoffs until they just lose every game for the last month of the season.
Yep. That happened.
Well, great culture.
We talked about
sometimes you just lose. But, like, you know what? He does deserve it. He's been here a long fucking time. He has put up with a lot of bullshit. This team, which was expected to be a bottom 5 team, making the playoffs, is something he should get to see through. And then he should be traded July 1st or at the draft. As soon as you're allowed to make trades, he should then be traded. That has not happened. And I'm just looking at how this is all unfolded because I was certain. I was like, no, he's getting moved. Like, you trade a guy like this. I don't care what their plan is. We're going to be competitive, blah, blah, blah. You trade a guy like this in this situation. And then the Michkov stuff happens. Matvei Michkov, we all know, coming over early. He has now signed his ELC. You can get his jersey. It's great. Hooray. They are now integrating not just a young, talented player, but one who is coming from a completely different continent, a completely different culture, at a very impressionable age, into a situation where team might not be all that great. Like, I'm looking at what they're going to be. And maybe they're exactly the same as last year. They're competitive in every game. They outplay their talent level. You are bringing over a super talented player in Matvei Michkov. That said, 3 of McDavid's first 4 years, Edmonton doesn't sniff the playoffs. Connor Bedard last year, awesome. They didn't win shit. Like, good young players do not equal winning. This might be a bad team considering we have no idea if the goalies are any good or not. Carter Hart is gone. Sean Couturier, first half, second half, big difference. If it's second half Sean Couturier, this team's going to stink.
Yeah,
like
fair point.
Yes, there could be a ton of internal development like we talked about yesterday.
It's always possible.
But how far? Like, do we expect any of these dudes to be, oh, man, they're game changers. They're difference makers.
I mean, that'd be fun.
It's fun.
That'd be great if that happens.
The likelihood is low.
Yeah.
Like, I think Forster's good. I don't know if he's a superstar.
And even if he is, there's no guarantee that happens this year.
Yeah.
It could happen when
happen
when he's 24.
Yeah, like, this team could stink. They could be a bottom 5 team this year. I don't think it's out of the realm.
I'm not expecting it, but it's a plausible outcome.
But it's if a couple of ifs go the other way, this is a very bad team.
Yeah. No, last year for the first, I would say 4 months of the season last year, every if went in the Flyers' way.
November, December, January, they got like the best goaltending in the league.
Basically, through the news that Carter Hart was indeed getting charged with a terrible thing, everything broke their way.
Yes.
Then from that point on, basically everything broke against them.
Cutter Gauthier happened, Carter Hart had, it was just, and then everything went to shit.
Yeah.
And if things go this is the Flyers. Oftentimes things go wrong.
Yeah. We've kind of come to expect it.
You weren't here the one day, but there's like 4 pages of not the biggest font graphics that I was showing that are like the stories we've been dealing with for the last 14 years, and they're not great.
Yeah.
Like, it could go bad. A team that's bad often has bad culture. Like, look who the best captains are. Oh, yeah, Jonathan Taves a great fucking captain. No shit. Team's awesome.
Yeah, it's like a chicken and egg.
Yes,
thing.
like
what came first?
Who are the teams with the best culture? Well, they're the teams that win a ton.
The teams with a lot of talent.
Except apparently the 2011 Flyers. They're in the President's Trophy race and everyone hated each other. Don't do drugs, kids. It's the offseason, do drugs. Anyway,
wow.
I think the main reason Scott Laughton is still here is because the entire franchise, the future of this franchise, especially given the Gauthier situation, now rests on getting Matvei Michkov to buy into the culture as well as be a superstar. Scott Laughton is integral in that. I'm not off base here?
I don't think it is the only reason. I do not think that the reason why he is still here,
I think it tipped the scales. If it's yes, no.
I'm sure it's played a part. Because, look, everything I've heard about Michkov, and it's been very whisper type of thing, but you do hear reports, you do hear from viable sources about this guy's had problems with teammates before. And in Kevin Kurz's article on the Michkov signing, or on just basically, I think it was the entire Michkov draft, why they picked him. This was last month. He said that the Flyers, and this is as good confirmation as you're going to get that there was something to this. The Flyers specifically asked Michkov in his pre-draft interview, what about these stories about you having problems with teammates? And basically what Michkov said, according to Kevin, was that I know I've had problems in the past. My issue is that I get frustrated because people aren't thinking the way I'm thinking on the ice. They're maybe not on my level from a talent standpoint, and I hold people to probably too high of a standard and lose my temper, and I'm working on it. I know it's something I need to deal with, and I'm prioritizing it. I could see that being a problem in the NHL. As you said, this Flyers team is not great. Now, it is certainly better than his team in Sochi. It's a lot better than that, but there will be guys on this team that will not think at the level that Matvei Michkov does. Probably most of them, because Matvei Michkov is a brilliant hockey mind.
Superstar.
You watch him play, and some of the shit he comes up with on the ice in terms of creativity, it's out of this world crazy good. So there will be times where he will get to a spot, and whoever his center is, whether it's Morgan Frost, even if it's Sean Couturier, won't see him, and Michkov may come back to the bench barking, Now, he'll probably be barking in Russian, so nobody will maybe be able to understand what the hell he's saying, but he might be angry. And that could be a problem, especially if he's yelling at Sean Couturier, the guy who the entire locker room got pissed off at on his behalf because the coach dared to scratch him for a couple games.
The locker room was more upset than him.
Yes.
He was like, I have kind of sucked. And they're like, it doesn't fucking matter.
But my point is that everything I've heard about Scott Laughton is that he is a bridge guy. That one of his big roles in that room, why he is so well-liked, universally well-liked, is that he's the bridge. You know, he's the guy who, you know, can be buds with Sean Couturier and go to his kid's birthday party, but then also get into prank wars with Travis Konechny, and then also go out to the bar with Joel Farabee and all the kids and buy everybody around because he's got the big, well, now Farabee's getting paid more, but you know what I mean? Yeah. Like, he can do all these things because he's the bridge between the different, not cliques, but just different sections of the locker room.
There's going to be...
Everybody likes Scott. And that is probably a good guy to have if you're bringing in a hyper-talented young player who the entire fate of your franchise rests upon, basically, for at least the next 5-6 years, probably. It's probably a good guy to have in case he ruffles some feathers, and you have to have Scott Laughton come in and be the guy to broker a peace between Michkov and Couturier, or Michkov and Sanheim, or you know what I mean? So there is value in that. And if Michkov is that important to the future of the franchise, and we believe he is, I see value in keeping somebody like that around. I do.
And I don't think it's just Scott Laughton. And I see your super chats. We are going to do them at the end of the show, as we have been. That's our new format. Thank you very much for your support. I just see a big one there, and I was like, that seems like I should address.
Seems like a lot of words.
Yeah.
We'll get to it.
But like, not just the Laughton of this. Like, when I say, like, I've said a few times now, I think they've really telegraphed that this thing is going to take longer than maybe we thought a year ago, which is good. It's funny because we've been begging for a long-term plan, and now we have one, and we're getting impatient. It's like, well, obviously. Yeah,
well, that's what we do.
Who we are. That's why they call us fans. But I see, like, keeping Laughton, re-upping Hathaway, because I thought for certain, like, that's a great trade piece to have this spring. Like, Garnett Hathaway at 2.38 or whatever it is, like, who wouldn't want to add that to a playoff team?
Well, was it just under 2.4, and then they gave him 2.4 in this extension?
4, yeah. Like, that's a great piece on an expiring contract. Every playoff team wants a Garnett Hathaway. Absolutely awesome. And then they re-up him. You bring back Erik Johansson to play that mentor role. And I do see so much of this as we're building a culture, but we have to keep the culture steady through what could be a rough couple of years. One, with Michkov developing, and two, maybe not winning as many games as we did last year.
Yes.
Like, I think both of those things play into that. Like, I don't think they're re-upping Garnett Hathaway and bringing back Erik Johansson because they're like, we need the second wild card. Like, I don't think that's the thinking
Definitely
here.
Not.
I think the thinking is we need to keep this thing steady because while we're not tanking, we ain't going for it either. And it's real hard to play for John Tortorella.
Yeah.
It's tiring. Yeah. That's the other part of this. They got 100% out of everybody all last year.
Well, maybe not at the very end. Maybe not for those 2 weeks when the floor fell out from under them.
Things did get shitty, but then they bounced back.
They did bounce back.
Like, they also got the worst goaltending I've ever seen,
That's
and
true.
I'm a Flyers fan.
Certainly part of it.
Like, I'm a Flyers fan from 95 on. I've seen the worst goaltending.
I don't know. That 2018, 2019 season when they had 10 goalies was pretty bad.
They got some of the worst goaltending that this city's ever seen.
Of the worst.
And that's saying a whole fucking lot.
It is.
Like, that takes a lot out of you. But playing for John Tortorella, being around him every day, and then playing the style he demands from you
is emotionally and mentally taxing.
It's draining. You're gonna at some point experience physical and mental exhaustion, and you are just gonna not be that good for a period of time. That period of time could start on the Disney on Ice trip this year rather than in March. Like, and if that happens, they are going to be a horrible fucking team. They need these guys to keep this together, even if the losing streaks really pile up. And I don't know if that's the worst idea. That's what I'm getting at. So as much as I disagree with this, I think I might be able to see where they're coming from.
So I do want to get into the culture element because there's a flip side of this that is definitely worth debating. But before that, I think we should have a word from our sponsors.
I think so too. It is 1:25 after all, and we're going to start out telling you about our friends at the Bet Parks Casino. Parks Casino is perfect for after work get-togethers, date night, or even girls' night out. You can sip on tantalizing drinks and soak up those warmer weather good vibes right now at Parks Casino. Parks Casino, this is how you win. It's my casino of choice. Parks now offers an epic $5 happy hour with great food and drinks every Wednesday through Sunday at the Liberty Bell Gastropub. Outstanding selection there. The menu, the drink options. I used to work a remote there at my previous employer every week, and you're goddamn right. I would stick around a little bit, make sure I got some food and drinks at Parks before I bailed out. You can enjoy $5 drafts of Forged Stout, Victory Seasonals, and Parks Pilsner. You can get $5 glasses of Albertoni Cabernet and enjoy the drink of the summer, $5 Twisted Tea, Frozen Whiskey Arnold Palmer's. I could kind of go for one of them right now. Plus, you can feast on flavor-packed $5 small plates of braised short rib sliders, honey hot chicken sliders, or rotisserie chicken flatbreads. The all-new Parks Casino Epic $5 happy hour happening right now. And with summer here, all roads lead to Parks, the #1 casino in Pennsylvania. 3,200 state-of-the-art slots, 115 live table games, a beautiful poker room, some award-winning restaurants you can check out. Joe Conklin's Comedy Night every other Thursday. A bunch of great cover bands, weekends at the 360 Lounge. Headliners every weekend at the 1,500-seat Excite Center at Parks Casino. Tiffany Haddish coming on September 27th. That's a big one. Tickets for all shows at parkscasino.com. Visit parkscasino.com. Must be 21. Gambling problem, 1-800-GAMBLER. Parks Casino. This is how you win. And while we're here, let me tell you about one of our newest sponsors that I've personally got to try out recently. It's Lucy Nicotine. It's 100% pure nicotine, always tobacco-free, available in pouches, gum, and breakers. You got to try the breakers. I'm a pouch guy personally. Breakers are pouches, but there's capsule liquid flavor inside that helps saturate the pouch, available in 4 milligrams or 8. I have been on the mint pouches and the wintergreen pouches. Got to tell you, the apple ice, don't sleep on the apple ice either. But if you're in it for gum, pouches, whatever, I'm a big fan of this product. A couple of months ago, I got a new car. Trying real hard not to smoke in the new car. One day it's going to be the family vehicle, you know. Want it to keep its value. Don't want to smell it up with smoke. So what have I been doing instead? I've been using the Lucy Nicotine because nothing stresses me out like being in traffic. We finished this show on a Friday. I'm going home in shore traffic. I told the boss I'm going to quit this job in a rage one day because I'm stuck in shore traffic. Lucy has prevented me from quitting this job in a rage while also not making my car smell absolutely horrible. So level up your nicotine with Lucy. Go to lucy.co/flyers and use promo code FLYERS to get 20% off your first order. Lucy offers free shipping and has a 30-day refund policy if you change your mind. That's lucy.co and use code FLYERS to get 20% off and always free shipping. And here comes the fine print. Lucy products are only for adults of legal age, and every order is age verified. Warning, this product contains nicotine. Nicotine is an addictive chemical.
Okay.
All right.
So I want to get into this counter argument because, look, I will stake my position out right now. I really have zero problem with Scott Laughton still being around. I do not think it is this horrible betrayal of the rebuild that he is still around. And I think that truthfully, a lot of the very online driven desire to make Laughton out to be like, you know, the fact they have Laughton is a disgrace and it's why everything isn't going the way we want it to. A lot of it is driven by those rumors that came out last summer about, well, you can get a first round pick for him. And suddenly it became, well, how can you not trade Laughton if you can't get a first round, if you could get a first round pick back for him? We take those rumors out of the equation. I don't think people are as adamant that Laughton has to be traded. I'd be totally fine if he spends the rest of his contract with Flyers. I don't really care. I think there's value in him being here. I think he's a perfectly fine player. I think he is important to that locker room in a lot of ways that we don't see, and I would have no problem with him keeping. But here's the counter argument, and this is, in my opinion, as much as I have zero problem with them keeping Scott Laughton, here's the counter argument for why keeping Scott Laughton can be frustrating to a lot of people. Garnet Hathaway, Nicholas Delorier, Eric Johnson, Nick Seeler. These are all guys who have been justified. Their continued presence on the roster has been justified because of the culture. Now, some of these guys are good. Garnet Hathaway is a legitimately good fourth-line winger. Nick Seeler is a legitimately good, I would say, bottom half of the lineup defenseman. I think you could put him anywhere from 4 to 6, and he will be a very, very solid defenseman. Yep. He will provide significant positive value. These are good players. However, that's a lot of players that are on this team in large part because of the culture. And I totally understand why people look at this roster and say, just how many of these guys do you freaking need? I get it.
And like, my thing has been, if we need certain dudes, a number of certain dudes to maintain this culture, you don't have a culture. You just have a couple of guys keeping everyone in line while the coach freaks out at everybody. Like,
I guess maybe that is a culture.
I guess. But like, I just look at, like, I look at what the Blackhawks did in the 2010s and how they had to, like, yes, there were core pieces that they never let go. But like, after that first cup, and they ran into serious cap problems and had to move on from a number of players, Dustin Byfuglien, Christopher Stieg, Brian Campbell, a whole bunch of guys. They reloaded and won 2 more cups. Like, moving on from all these players. We have seen it with Tampa over the years. Now, granted, like, leading up to and following the cups, they didn't have that same success, but if they had, they'd won 6 straight cups. But like, a great team for a long time, they lose pieces, and then they find a way to replace those pieces. Like, they're not, oh, well, we have to have fucking Corey Perry and Pat Maroon. Without those 2 guys, what are we? Like, no, they just figure it out.
Yeah.
Luke Shen leaves, and it's, oh, what are we going to do without Luke Shen? No, you figure it out. I just don't, like, if the culture is unsustainable without these players, you do not have a culture. You just have a couple of good leaders. Like, dudes who know how to deal with the coach and deal with young guys. That's it.
I think here's my issue with the sheer number of players that they have, and they justify by basically like, look how good they are in the room, look how good they are for the culture. I think that there are some guys, like Laughton, I do believe is one of them, where Scott Laughton is actually an integral part of the social environment of the Flyers. I've made the case, and I truly believe this, I do not think that Owen Tippett would be the player he is today if he does not go into a Scott Laughton-driven locker room, because Owen Tippett is a shy guy who is not a traditional macho-type hockey player, and there are some rooms that he could have gone into after kind of flopping, after being a high draft pick and going to a new place, where that personality would not have been embraced the way it was with the Flyers. And I think that's in large part because Scott Laughton fosters the kind of culture in that room that makes it so like, nah, we're all brothers. And like, just because you're quiet and shy doesn't mean you're weird. It means that you are just quiet and shy. And we're going to make sure you feel like you belong at all times. I think Scott Laughton is a big part of why Owen Tippett became more comfortable and became a legitimately good top 6 NHL forward. I think Scott Laughton's having a real impact there. However, there are other guys on this team that I think are here that they maybe say they're here for the culture, but they're really here because they just like having them. Like, Nick Delorier is, in my opinion, not really having that big of an impact. It's just that this organization likes to have a dude who can beat the shit out of people. Yes. It's not even, like, is it partially for the fans? Like, you love the fights. Yeah. It's fun.
No, it's for me.
But it's also because it makes the guys at the top of this organization just feel all warm and fuzzy inside that they have a tough guy. And
Delorier led the league in fights. They like that.
They like that. And it's not Yes, they're going to say that he's great for the culture and he's a great locker room guy. And you know what? He is. He is. I have interviewed Nick DeLaurier a bunch of times. I've seen him interact with his players. He's a great dude. Nothing bad to say about Nick DeLaurier. I do not think the culture would fall apart if Nick DeLaurier wasn't in it. But they like having a fighter. And same thing with Garnet Hathaway. And I think Garnet Hathaway is a really good player. He's a really good fourth liner, probably one of the better fourth liners in hockey, pure fourth liners, in my opinion. But I don't think they re-signed him because he's integral to the culture. I think they re-signed him because it makes them feel good to have a Garnet Hathaway on their team, because he's fun to watch and because he fits the idea of what they want a Flyer to be.
Flyers hockey.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I don't know if those guys are necessary. In the same way that I do think Laughton, like, it's almost like a boy who cried wolf thing. Like, how many times can you say this guy can't be traded for the good of the culture until a guy who's actually legitimately integral to the culture comes up and you're like, well, you've been selling us this for like 5 other guys. Why the fuck do you also need Scott Laughton? So I get it.
Like, there always has to be, we used to have the conversation about input and output. You can be a great locker room guy. At the end of the day, you need to be good at hockey.
Yeah.
Like, Scott Laughton is very good at hockey. He's not a top of the lineup guy, but he's a good hockey player. So it makes sense to have a guy like that. But then when you start to get lower in the lineup, it's like, couldn't we just have someone who's better?
Yeah, like how many do we actually need?
Wouldn't a better player result in more wins than having DeLaurier? Like,
and again, does it actually matter in the grand scheme of things, especially given the fact that they're not trying to compete? No. It's not the end of the world that Nick DeLaurier is on the roster, especially if he's not playing much, especially because he probably does make the young guys feel a little bit better about trying the Michigan because Nick DeLaurier is sitting on the bench or they can bring him in for the next game, whatever. It doesn't matter that much. But I understand why fans are like, how many friggin' players do you have to sell me that the main reason why they're here is the culture? Like, I get why it gets exhausting because, again, it becomes a boy cried wolf thing, and it would almost be better if they were just honest and were like, not like, we just like having the toughest guy in the league. Like, this is the Flyers. We're always going to have the toughest guy in the league. Maybe he's only going to play 25 games, but it just makes us feel better that we have a badass face puncher.
Absolutely.
That would probably be more honest than me. Like, nah, if we lost him, the locker room just would not be the same.
I got to tell you, as much as I really like having, I am a fan of Scott Laughton. He won me over a few years ago. That dude always has a place on my team. I just don't know how much like room there is left for him at this juncture, but they have plenty of time. I got to tell you, if you don't love Scott Laughton, I don't know how. After Flyers yesterday, put this out on social media, just absolutely Laughton and Gritty go to a J.C. Penney. Like, how many guys would even be comfortable doing this? When he's holding him is the best part. I badly need to see the photo where it's like, who would even be comfortable?
Yes, there it is.
Being held by the team mascot like a baby.
Oh my god!
like the bodyguard or something.
Incredible.
Like, and that's what got me onto this subject is because yesterday when that came out, I just quote tweeted and was like, "So he's never getting traded, is he?" And it really just doesn't seem like it. Is it surprising, given how much they value like that aspect? And maybe it's because they are willing to trade him if the right deal comes along at some point. And it's like, well, we can't trade Scott. We can't trade Sean Couturier. It's a little surprising to you that Laughton wasn't just named the captain.
No. Look, my personal opinion was that I would have named Scott Laughton the captain because I think functionally he is the social captain, the bridge, as I mentioned. And also I like the idea, and shit, I really got proven right on this one. I like the idea of the best player not being the captain because it doesn't add that added pressure of like, well, now you're the captain. Like, I said this back in March. If Sean Couturier would have gotten scratched and he didn't have the C, would it have been a big deal? Yeah, it would have been. We would have talked about it on the show a lot, to be sure. It wouldn't have been a national story. It would have been like, oh, struggling player gets scratched for a game. Yeah, it's surprising. And man, that looks like a bad contract for the Flyers. Ha ha, and some jokes on Twitter. But the fact that he was the captain made it a big, big friggin' thing, especially in Canada. So I would have been perfectly happy with them going with Laughton as the center because it would have been like, a Jason Smith, Dave Andrechuk style captain.
Yes.
That would have been ideal for me. I don't like the idea of the captain getting blamed for everything because he's also the best player, which means that you're the captain and the best player. You should just put the team on your back whenever I'm pissed off at the team. And if they don't win, it's all your fault. No one's going to say that to Scott Laughton because everybody knows he's not that good.
If he's on your third line, that's okay, cool.
However, everything I heard was that Briere and them wanted Laughton to be captain, or wanted Couturier to be captain. That one of the big reasons why they didn't name a captain that first year was because it was always supposed to be Coots, and Coots wasn't there. So we're not going to put a C on someone just for then to be weird when Coots comes back, and then it's like, well, actually, you should be the captain. I think that was always the plan. So it wasn't a massive surprise. The timing was a surprise, but it wasn't a surprise to me that Couturier was the captain, even though I personally would have probably went with Laughton because I think it was kind of, at least internally, it was viewed as kind of like a fait accompli.
And my theory of why you put the C on your best player was proven incorrect with Claude Giroux, at least. I always think because the captain, his true responsibility is conversing with the officials. So I want my captain to have a great relationship with the officials so that he gets the star calls. Well, I watched Claude Giroux do it for a decade. He never got star calls. He got maybe the worst whistle in hockey.
Yeah. He was a diver. They never forgave him for being a diver in the beginning of his career. Yeah.
And
never forgave him.
Every now and then I saw him do it later in his career. Like I remember one time he got bumped and slingshotted himself face first into the glass. He would do it every now and then later, but not really. He got a terrible whistle. He got that reputation early and just really never shook it.
Yeah, never did.
But Jesus Christ, Sidney Crosby.
Yeah.
One of the divers of all time.
Yeah, in his early days, 100%.
And
he shook it.
He gets every fucking win. Yeah. But also Sidney Crosby maybe at the end of the day on the Mount Rushmore.
Yeah, he's a top 10 player in NHL history.
I realize there's a huge gap there in terms of your general star player and legit generational superstar. Yeah. I get it. But that was always my theory and didn't work for G. So I am a little more partial to the Jason Smith type of captain like you said. Before we get to this next part, I want to tell you about our friends, the presenting sponsor, our daily presenting sponsor. We are so proud to be brought to you by Mortgage CS. But I want to take a minute to tell you about our friends at Mortgage CS, an independent mortgage broker based right here in Philly. What this means is they won't steer you to just one mortgage option or to what's best for them. They work for you, not the banks. This is incredibly important because today's real estate market is ultra competitive. Prospective home buyers, perhaps just like you, are missing out on opportunities to win the perfect home because they don't have Mortgage CS in their corner. The mortgage company you choose matters more than ever. Even if you are already in the market, you can still explore your options with Mortgage CS. And if you do, you may be shocked at how much money you can save. Ben and Alec at Mortgage CS will ensure you have a rock-solid pre-approval, and they'll take the time to explore anything you want. That's why Mortgage CS is the mortgage concierge service. The real estate market is competitive, so you can rely on Mortgage CS to help you understand where you can be flexible in your offer to buy a home without taking on unnecessary risk. There's a reason people win more with Mortgage CS, so call or text Ben right now at 267-391-7425 and see for yourself. You can also go to mortgagecs.com/PHLY to check them out or view their 370 plus perfect 5-star reviews by searching Mortgage CS right now. Open up another browser window. Yeah, type in Mortgage CS. Check out those reviews. They're real and they're spectacular. This advertisement is not a commitment to lend or extend credit. Mortgage CS is an equal housing opportunity mortgage broker. All loans are subject to credit approval. Certain restrictions may apply. Company NMLS ID number 1464766. Visit mortgagecs.com for more information.
Hell yeah.
All right, so we talked at the beginning about how, yes, this offseason, just pure definition, by not doing anything, you missed one of the major opportunities to add the talent you badly need to this organization to compete for Stanley Cups. Yeah. But we got this tweet yesterday from Flyers fan 39 that I wanted to spotlight, just to a little bit different of view. In 2 years, when our cap space finally opens up, we'll look back at this offseason and be grateful Danny Briere didn't overextend. This should be another good year to develop the kids. Let's see who can take a step forward. And we did talk about this a bit yesterday, the second part, where it's, all right, this is another evaluation year.
Correct.
And with Michkov here, we can perhaps better evaluate.
Yeah, evaluation and development year.
Evaluate and develop.
Because I don't like I'm looking at like Jamie Drysdale as an example. I'm not going whatever he is this upcoming season. It's not going to be for me. It's not going to be like that's who he is.
No,
but I want to see development. I want to see progress and improvement. That's the key for someone like him this year. Whereas maybe someone like Morgan Frost, if I see him for a year with Matvei Michkov and he still isn't any better, it's like okay, well that's just who he is.
Yeah, like if he's a 40-point player still.
Yeah.
All right. Well. This is Morgan Frost.
This is Morgan Frost.
No, like Morgan Frost, Owen Tippett, they're in a different pool.
To be sure.
Where it's like, let's see them take the next step to, like you said yesterday, Travis Konechny tier.
Right.
Let's see them become that, or we have to reevaluate their place in this. So, I mean, Owen Tippett not going anywhere, but reevaluate where we pencil them in, even in this organization.
100%.
Do we need to fill this hole? Is Tippett more of a third-line power play guy than he is a top six guy? Stuff like that.
But getting back to the Flyers fan.
But back to
39?
Yes.
39 tweets?
The top part of that, the first half of it, in 2 years, we'll be happy that they didn't do anything because that's when it really matters. And you don't want to be overextended. You don't want to be looking at the cap situation 2 years from now and be like, ooh, yeah, we got Trevor Zegras, but he's a 2C, but we're paying him $8, $9, $10 million bucks. Maybe not the best move. Okay, the one thing I'll say about this offseason, the big positive, other than Michkov coming over, obviously that's huge.
Yeah, enormous.
They haven't made the big mistake.
They have not made the big mistake.
They have not dug themselves into a position that they can't get out of.
And even the Konechny contract, I do not think will qualify as the big mistake. Now, if 3 years down the line he's a shell of himself, then it will. But in the moment, you can say he's still a very good player, and you just got to cross your fingers that he ages well.
Every day that goes by, I wonder more and more, is this going to get done?
Well, we'll see.
I look around the league. There's other contracts. I look at the Mitch Marner situation. Like, the Leafs just might let him walk. Like, I don't know if it's going to work out the way Travis Konechny and the Flyers thought it was going to work out.
No,
it just might not line up.
We'll see. But
they haven't made the big mistake. And I look at past Flyers teams. Like, there's an article up right now on The Athletic, Kevin Kurz wrote. And it's about Patrick Sharp's current role, why he gave up, he was really good on TV, and why he moved from that to the Flyers front office. But it opens with, hey, remember that trade? Yeah, fuck you, Kevin. I do remember it. but great at the time, not thought like it's a team running for the cup, and Ken Hitchcock was like, nah, this guy can't play center. Get rid of him. Right. Gets rid of him. He goes on to be he's not Patrick Kane, but a core depth piece.
He was in that second, third tier on those Blackhawks.
Had some 30-goal seasons.
Really good player.
Became a core piece on a team that won 3 Stanley Cups.
Yeah, he was like the Owen Tippett of that team.
Exactly, yes. I look at the JVR for Schenn trade when it's like, I want change because I want change. Fine, give me fucking Luke Schenn for JVR. Cool. Well, how'd that work out? Yeah, we don't all love JVR here, but those Leaf years, I would have very much taken that production over what we got out of Luke Schenn, which was bad, like overall bad, And the fact that they aren't just doing the Flyers thing of past years, where it's, well, our fans really want us to do something, so we should do something. That is progress. Like, that's organizational progress.
It is. No, it's
considering
fair.
Like we were when this regime came in, it was like, yeah, it's a new era of orange, but it's also getting back to what we were. We lost our way, They're not doing all of the old shit, and that's good.
Yeah, look, what I'll say about that, however, and as I've articulated over the last 24 hours, I don't think that it's the end of the world that they didn't do anything. It just means they have more things to do in future off seasons. It's fine. They're going to have to do more things in future off seasons, but it's not going to kill them that they didn't. The big issue here is that your freak out made me completely lose my train of thought.
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry.
I'm supposed to do 2 reads in a row, and I did the one and then forgot and moved on. But
okay.
After your point,
I'm back in my train of thought here. Okay, so if you're so afraid that they're going to make a bad move and that's why you're justifying them not doing anything, then do we really have the right people in charge? That's my concern.
Well,
and I know a lot of this is PTSD Flyers fans because people are so used to, abject failures running the team and making insane moves. But like the idea of, well, we should be thankful Danny didn't do anything because if he would have done something, he would have fucked up. Like you should have more faith in your GM. And also, I don't really think there's any reason for us to believe that if Danny made a move, that it would necessarily be a mistake. Like, he hasn't made bad moves yet. Now, he could, and if he does, we will be critical. But until he starts making gigantic mistakes, I don't think we should assume that if he makes a move, it's going to be bad.
What Charlie's saying is sometimes we need to choose chill. Between work, social media, the choices life throws our way, it's no wonder we're just worked up all the time. Coors Light celebrates rising above and choosing a chill mindset. Why not turn a rained-out barbecue into a karaoke house party? Or after a tough loss, settle scores with an ice-cold peace offering. Make the choice to choose chill, then reach for a Coors Light. It's mountain cold refreshment. Listen, this team, they drive us nuts. We're just talking about, we have serious scars from the last 20 years of Flyers hockey, basically. And that's why sometimes we all need to choose chill. And when we make that decision, just, you know what? We're going to let the cards play. What's the cliche? We're going to play the cards as they're dealt, whatever it is. We need to celebrate that decision with an ice-cold Coors Light. So whether you're freaking out about the moves they've made, they haven't made, development, the draft, whatever, you need to find the Blue Mountains in your fridge and enjoy a beer as cold as the Rockies, because when everything surrounding your favorite hockey team is on fire, sometimes you just got to chill. Make the most of the times you choose to chill. Choose Coors Light. Get Coors Light delivered straight to your door with Instacart by going to CoorsLight.com/PHLY hockey. Celebrate responsibly. Coors Brewing Company, Golden, Colorado. Now, and I don't think, I'm not assuming the moves would be bad. I'm just looking at it as at least they didn't make a move for the sake of making a move.
Yes.
And that's a positive.
And that's bad.
That they didn't screw up just because, we got to do something.
It's certainly better. Doing nothing is better than the alternative fucking up. It's just
yes.
that, this could have been a lot worse if they would have redid the Ristolainen trade. Yeah, that would have been insane. The thing is that, my hope is that they have people in charge now who won't make those kind of glaring, obvious errors.
It seemed as if the entire Hextall era was based on we're just not going to make mistakes, and in so doing chose to do nothing.
And that ultimately proved to be a mistake.
And that led to where we are right now.
Right.
That's why we are where we are.
Right.
So eventually they have to do something.
Yes.
But it isn't the end of the world that they didn't. And
they could have created a set of circumstances where they could have legitimately not done anything. And that set of circumstances would have been tear it down. But they chose not to do that. So they put themselves in a position where they will ultimately have to do things. Now, again, doesn't have to be this summer. It can be next summer. It can be the summer of 2026. But at some point, they're going to have to, unless they are really just banking on getting a core of superstars with the 13th to 17th picks, which doesn't seem like the best strategy. If you're going to do it this way, you have to make moves at some point. They didn't make them this summer. They got to make them at some point. It's just a summer when they didn't do what they ultimately will have to do at some point in the future. Flyers fan 39 might be right that if they go out next summer and have a kick-ass summer, they get a blue-chip prospect at the top of the draft, whether it's because they drafted there or it's because somebody slips or it's because they trade up. I don't know. But they get a blue-chip prospect at the top of the draft. They ship out one of their first-round picks for a fun under-25 guy with a high-end potential. They move things around. They make some trades. And then you're like, oh man, there's a path to this team potentially being a cup contending team, then this offseason will look great in retrospect. And I said that in my article, that if that's the way it plays out, we will look back on the 2024 offseason and be like, Danny, great job being patient. You had the vision and you had the fortitude to basically tell everyone who was saying, why aren't you do stuff, to basically be like, screw you, I know what I'm doing. And then you showed the following year you knew what you were doing. The problem is that we don't have a time machine. Yeah. We don't know what's going to happen in a year. We don't know if Briere is going to have a great offseason or if he's just going to do nothing again. And then we're going to be having this same conversation on July 10th, 2025. We don't know. All we can do is evaluate what happened this offseason. And what happened this offseason was very little.
And that's like we were talking about this before we went live. Like, yeah, there are obviously the cap situation will clear itself up in the next couple of years. So that's kind of a waited out constraint on the team.
But by the same token, like I don't want them diving into free agency that much anyway.
Exactly. The idea that like, oh, well, you know, there's only so much you can do. It takes two to tango. Trades are hard. We've heard that before. That will continue to be true.
Yeah.
Trades will continue to need the other side to agree to them. Trades will continue to be hard to make. There will continue to be other teams involved trying to get the same players you're getting, whether it's in trades or free. Like, those problems and the degree of difficulty doesn't get easier. Yeah, they'll have more money. The cap's going up. Guys are coming off the books. That problem solves itself with time. The other problem, trading for the talent they need, that continues.
Yeah.
Like, it will continue to be difficult.
Yeah. It's not going to get easy. I mean, maybe you'll get lucky.
Yeah.
And that's part of this. Part of this plan is the idea of we want to have the assets and we want to have the flexibility so that when another team is about to make a mistake, we can be the team that swoops in and takes full advantage of the fact that they stupidly soured on a future 1C or they unnecessarily pissed off a really talented 26-year-old and he doesn't want to resign. So boom, we can go in and get it. That's part of the plan. And then you build up a culture where those guys will want to re-up with you because they're looking over at the Flyers and they're like, man, that looks like a lot of fun. It's a big market. I can make a lot of money, endorsements, all this other stuff. I'm not going to be, it's not Toronto where everyone's going to know who the hell I am. And then suddenly you're ready to pounce. But it doesn't mean that it's not difficult to take advantage of that because every other team is going to be trying to do the same thing.
And then when you get to that level, the pyramid scheme comes in, Charlie.
Oh, love the pyramid scheme.
You can go to Brad Richards and go, yeah, it's only 1 year, $1 million, but you'll win the cup.
Right.
Whereas really, we can't win the cup without him on that deal.
Because our depth would be awful if we don't have those guys.
Yeah, but guess what? You get to come here and win the cup.
No, the final 2 or 3 years of the Chicago Blackhawks dynasty, it was a Ponzi scheme. It was a fucking Ponzi scheme.
It was genius.
Because it was, you can come here to win a cup, but we would not win a cup if you didn't come here.
And it was, the Red Wings did the same thing in their time. Like, that's what happens when you have sustained success. But like 9 things have to happen.
You got to get really far to get to that point.
We got to like win that first one first.
Well, that's why it was fast. We talked about this before, how it was fascinating that players on the Avalanche and players on the Lightning were taking those deals before they'd actually won a cup.
It was just like, well,
they ultimately got rewarded because they did win their cups.
It was like, yeah, they're gonna.
But it's just, it was surprising to see like guys re-signing in Tampa for less when they hadn't won yet. It was like, isn't this putting the cart before the horse a little bit? Like, don't you have to actually win the cup before guys give you the cup discount?
It's the Flyers just need to like invest in a whole block of shore houses somewhere. Like, it's not Tampa, but it's
like
Seattle.
An hour and 15 minutes away. It's not far.
Seattle.
Yeah, right.
All right, let's get to the super chats.
Hey,
all right, we have a few here. For the first one from Space Lettuce, love it. GM, can you explain why teams avoid using LTIR?
Yeah.
And this is something we've talked about before, but as we mentioned the other day, with the Michkov news and the Flyers hopefully getting better, new people are going to jump in, and we might have to backtrack and kind of explain certain things.
Which we'll be happy to. Like, we want this to be a big tent. Not only, like, we want PHLY to be a big tent, we also want the Flyers fan base to be a big tent. We want all of the bandwagon hoppers. Bandwagon hoppers are good. They make it more fun for everybody because when that place is rocking, there's nothing better.
Also, we're just sick and we know this shit.
Yeah.
Like, we are the 1% in terms of sickness and knowing this stuff.
But,
so the LTIR, why not use it?
Yeah. So Space, let us answer your question. The reason why you ideally don't want to tap an LTIR is because if you're tapping an LTIR, you are technically above the cap. It's not like using LTIR. LTIR gives you cap space. You don't have any cap space. What it gives you is the allowance to go over the cap. Now, let's say you are under the cap. You're a team that it's an $88 million cap ceiling, and you, on the first day of the season, are at $87 million. So you're $1 million under the cap. Now, the way it works is, in that situation, is that every day you are under the cap, you bank cap space. So let's say that every day they are 1 mil under the cap because you spread this out over however long the season is, you are banking $50,000 worth of cap space. Every day you're $1 million under the cap. Okay, $50,000 isn't that big of a deal. But after 2 days, it's $100,000. After 10 days, it's $1 million. Now, suddenly, you have $1 million worth of cap space that you could spend later on in the year. This is why, at the deadline, there are teams that have $25 million worth of cap space that they could spend on trading for assets, because you don't take on their entire cap hit when you trade for them. You take on what's left of their cap hit over the final however many days there are. Now, why does this matter for the Flyers? The Flyers are almost certainly not going to be trying to make big acquisitions, big adds at the trade deadline. They're in a rebuild. They're not looking to spend assets. The reason why it matters is because of bonus overages. So Matvei Michkov is going to be on the Flyers, okay? He's making the team. They've straight up said that. His cap hit for salary cap compliance purposes for day one is $950,000. That's his entry-level salary. However, he has a lot of bonuses. And he has a lot of bonuses that almost certainly he's going to hit. So at the end of the year, even though at the start of the year his cap hit was $950K, at the end of the year, it might be $3 million because of all those bonuses. So that means that you have $2,050,000 that you need to account for at the end of the day. Now, if you bank cap space over the course of the year, you have more than enough to cover those bonus overages. If you didn't, because you were using allowance and you were over the cap, which meant you banked $0 all year, you have nothing to give of that cap space. You have zero cap space left at the end of the year, which means that bonus overage gets plugged into your cap for the next year. So therefore, the Flyers would start out next season minus $2 million already off the bat. And that's something you ideally want to avoid. You ideally would like to have as clean of a book for next season and the following season, because then it starts snowballing. Then it's like, okay, well, we have less cap space for 2025-26. So therefore, we have to do cap gymnastics. And then we have a bonus overage for the next year because of those cap gymnastics. And now suddenly, you're just kicking the can down the road further and further, and you're killing your cap flexibility for the years you're actually going to need it. So ideally, you don't want to be tapping into LTIR because it doesn't allow you to bank cap space. And for the Flyers, it's because it won't allow them to account for the bonus overages or the bonuses that you know are coming from guys in particular like Matvei Michkov.
All right. That is an excellent explanation, Charlie. Let's go to Brett W. Said, should our opinions on players hold more weight during the regular season or off season? For example, when TK was scoring shorthanded goals and being TK, he was beloved. Now in the offseason, the perception seems different. I mean,
it's an interesting question about bias, because I do agree that, like, when you're watching a guy do fun things, you're excited about it. Whereas in the offseason, when you can kind of take a 400-foot view of the whole thing, you might be less excited about a Konechny because the recency bias, you're not remembering all the fun times you've had watching him. However, I would argue that the recency bias is part of being a fan.
Yeah, that's what fandom is.
If you're running a team, you should always be viewing it with the 400, 500-foot view. So the answer to the question is they should the opinions on a player should, the offseason opinions should hold more weight, because that's the more objective evaluation. Now, if you're a fan, believe what you want. Enjoy Travis Konechny and argue that, like, no, I want Travis Konechny to be on the team because he's my favorite player and I love him. That is a completely fair stance for a fan to have. But if you're talking about what Briere should think, he should absolutely account more for his offseason opinion than the opinion that is being biased by just watching Travis Konechny score a highlight reel goal the night before.
I think of it like that, yeah, that's what being a fan is. I think back to like the Phillies pre-07. And it's like, I didn't like Bobby Abreu. I wanted Bobby Abreu traded. I was right. Just saying.
You were.
But if Bobby Abreu hits a home run, I am happy because the Phillies scored runs.
Right.
Like, and that's what made like the tanking conversation last year. Like, yeah, it's what I think they should do. But when I'm watching game to game, like when a Flyers player shoots the puck and it goes in the net, I'm not going to go, oh, God damn it.
Yeah.
Like, that's
Some
hard
people
for
on
me
Twitter
to
seem like they were, especially at the beginning of this
That's
season.
very hard for me. Like, I can't, that's not going to be me, even though my overall view is just like, let's lose for 2-3 years, you know, because we're probably not going to be very good anyway. So let's just be bad. But again, we don't need to rehash this.
Right.
But like, I just like, that's what being a fan is, I think. Like, that's, you get to be a hypocrite. That's the fun part of being a fan.
That is true. But I will say that, Brett, for Danny Briere, his offseason opinion should hold way more weight than his regular season opinion because it's dealing with a larger sample size, and also it's not as influenced by the biases that we're all going to have by just having watched a game the night before where a guy did something either really cool or really bad.
And that's I still like Travis Konecny. Think he's a real good player. I don't think he's a $9 million player. And that's what it gets into the, all right, do we keep him or do we get rid of him?
Have to make hard decisions
Let's
sometimes.
go to Linden 49. Agree or disagree? Love the show. Thanks, guys.
Thank you, Linden
Not even
49.
a question. Thank you so much, Linden. Appreciate it. This next one is from Catholic Nano.
Sure.
Since we're talking trades, hindsight being 2020, do you trade Forsberg for Lindros for today? Absolutely, I do. Give Eric Lindros, Joe Sakic, and Patrick Waugh, and the team never loses. They go 82-0, sweep the playoffs 3-4 years in a row.
I am unsure, but I do think that the idea of, well, Forsberg had the better career than Lindros, like in some ways he did. It was longer. You know,
he scored, I think, 20 more points than Lindros total.
Yeah, and Lindros played fewer games, I would assume. However that plays out. I just don't think, like, this would be easier for me to swallow if Lindros was a bust. And I get that he didn't live up to the insane expectations that everybody had, given that he was like the next one who was going to bring multiple cups to whatever team he went, the same way that Lemieux did and the same way that Gretzky did and whatever. That said, the Lindros year, and I'm more going by the people I've talked to, because
Lindros played more games.
Played more games than Forsberg?
Yeah.
Oh, interesting.
760 to 708.
Wow. And Forsberg got a few more points?
Yeah.
My point is that the Lindros era, if you lived it, apparently was a lot of fun. And I don't love the idea of just like being like, nah, none of that mattered because we didn't win a cup, or none of that mattered because it ended poorly. Like, that decade for the people who followed that team was a blast in large part because Eric Lindros was an awesome, super fun to watch hockey player. And I don't love the idea of just looking at it purely from a like, well, did he win a cup? No. Then they should have kept Forsberg. Like, personally, and this is going just from a me bias standpoint, I didn't get to see the prime of Eric Lindros. I got to see the bad years when everything was going to shit. So I personally have warmer memories about Peter Forsberg than I do Eric Lindros. But there are a lot of people that have such great memories of watching Eric Lindros do Eric Lindros things, and I don't think I would reverse that trade.
Peter
I really
Forsberg
don't think I would.
ruled. Peter Forsberg was fucking awesome. He was never the best player on his team.
Yeah, maybe. I mean,
Joe Sakic is amazing.
You could make a strong argument that he was better than Sakic. It's a debate that can be had.
I don't know. I just think, like, give Eric Lindros Sakic, give him Patrick Waugh, give him Rob Blake, Ray Bourque.
I mean, they were
like,
only there for
teams,
a little bit.
That's one of the cups.
Adam Foote was the staple on that defense.
Absolutely. I'm just give them those guys.
Yeah,
they never lose. They never lose, and you can still trade Recchi for Leclerc and Desjardins. Like, you know,
I'm just saying that it's not like the Lindros era was bad.
No,
and I don't love the idea of reversing it just because of how it ended. Because that a cup was
Bobby Clark would still be the GM, and he'd still be coveting guys like Paul Coffey and Adam Oates, even though that was after. Oates was after.
Yeah,
but like you know, whatever. All right, and the last one here from Xanothium 15. Can Flyers do anything with RJ and his injury? Who is RJ?
Ryan Johansson.
Oh, Ryan Johansson.
So
he has to get cleared for them to buy him out.
The big now he definitely can't be bought out because
that's over,
the buyout window is
and
passed
no
and they don't have a
arbitration.
second buyout window open. So he's not getting bought out.
Yeah.
The big answer, the question really here isn't can the Flyers do anything? It's will they do anything? Because if they really wanted to, if the Flyers really, really wanted to, they could get lawyers involved. They could challenge whether Johansson's full of shit or not. They could, turn this into a big friggin' thing and really, put his claim under serious scrutiny. I don't think they want to bother. I think they're looking at it as, is it really worth it? We're not trying to contend anyway. Like, yeah, in an ideal world, we would be able to send him down in the minors, and then we'd be barely under the the cap ceiling. We don't necessarily need to tap an LTIR. But then they might need to tap an LTIR anyway once guys start getting hurt, because they'd only be like $300,000 below it anyway. What they clearly wanted to do with Johansson was buy him out. They wanted to get him, stash him down in the minors for the final month and a half of the season, buy him out in the summer, and deal with the cap hit for 2 years. They weren't able to do that because Johansson said, I'm hurt. If they were going to go nuclear on this and get the lawyers involved and get the doctors involved, they would have done it in April and May and June. At this point, I think they've just made the decision that it's not worth it to make this into a big federal case. Let's just ride it out.
All right. And that will do it for the Super Chats. So that will do it for us.
Yep.
Thank you all for listening. Thank you for hanging out. If you haven't already, hit that subscribe button. Follow us on YouTube, follow us on Twitter, follow the podcast. Thank you very much to our presenting sponsor, Mortgage CS. We love our friends at Mortgage CS. We'll be back tomorrow at 1 o'clock. Until then, you stay loose and sexy, Philly.
We all silly like the mayor.